Every year, millions of Americans vote with their feet. Not in elections, in moving trucks. They leave states where the cost of staying has become the cost of everything, and they move to states where the math still works, at least for now. The question everyone asks is where people are leaving. California, New York, Illinois, New Jersey. Those names appear in every story about domestic migration, and they appear there for documented reasons. But the question that tells you more about where this country is actually going is not where people are leaving. It is where they are landing. And the answer is not always the one you expect. This list ranks the 10 states receiving the largest and most significant influx of domestic migrants, drawing on U.S. Census Bureau Vintage 2024 data, IRS statistics of income migration records, United Van Line's annual movers studies, the Consumer Affairs Migration Analysis, ResiClub Analytics, and state-level economic research. The states on this list are not random. They share specific characteristics that millions of Americans in the middle of expensive, high-tax, high-cost states have decided are worth a long-distance move. Subscribe now because number 1 on this list is receiving, per capita, more domestic migrants than any other state in the country. And the people arriving are older, wealthier, and arriving in numbers that are reshaping local housing markets, healthcare demand, and tax rolls faster than the state has infrastructure to absorb. Let's count it down. Number 10, West Virginia. The state that has been losing people for decades is, by one measure, now receiving more of them per move than almost any other state in the country. According to United Van Line's 2024 National Movers Study, which has tracked household moves for 48 consecutive years, West Virginia ranked first among ALDL states for the highest percentage of inbound moves at 66%. In 2025, it ranked second at 62%. For a state that was historically characterized by departure, that pattern is new and specific. The people arriving are not primarily young job seekers. They are people moving to be closer to family, the top cited reason at 35%. And people transferring for new jobs at 31%, according to United Van Line's survey data of actual movers. West Virginia's median home price is approximately $240,000, according to data from Altos Research, a figure that represents extraordinary value to anyone arriving from the New York metro area or coastal California, where the same money buys a fraction of a property. The irony is documented and measurable. West Virginia has lost young people to economic migration for generations. The jobs were elsewhere and the young went with them. What it is now receiving, in their place, is a different demographic. People with equity, with retirement income, with the ability to choose a place based on cost and space rather than proximity to an office. The people leaving West Virginia and the people arriving are not the same people. They are solving different problems. Living in West Virginia is like being the small town that the city kids always overlooked, until the city became something that the city kids could no longer afford. And the small town suddenly looked like the answer. Number 9, Delaware. It ranks second on the United Van Line's 2024 inbound list, a state so small it barely registers in the national imagination, and more than half of its inbound movers in 2024 were 65 years or older. Delaware's appeal is not climate or scenery, it is arithmetic. Delaware has no sales tax. Its property tax rates are among the lowest of any state on the East Coast. Homes in Delaware average approximately 16% less than comparable homes across the border in Maryland and approximately 22% less than comparable homes in New Jersey, according to data cited by researchers at the University of California, Los Angeles, and reported by United Van Lines. And Delaware sits at the geographic center of the most heavily populated corridor in the United States, close enough to Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, and New York to remain connected without paying what those cities charge to live in their orbit. Of movers arriving in Delaware in 2024, 12% came from New York alone, according to United Van Line's data. The number one reason cited was a desire to be closer to family, at 36%. The state that was always overshadowed by its neighbors has become a destination for the people those neighbors are pricing out. Delaware's population growth attributable to domestic migration was 0.79% in fiscal 2024, according to the Tax Foundation analysis of Census Bureau data, placing it fourth nationally, behind only South Carolina, Idaho, and North Carolina. Living in Delaware is like discovering that the house between all the expensive houses is the one with the best deal, and that the people who figured this out first were the ones who were pricing themselves out of the expensive houses right next door. Number 8, Tennessee. No state income tax. Nashville's rising national profile in finance, healthcare, and technology. A cost of living that, even as it has risen with the migration wave, still compares favorably to the markets people are leaving, and a location in the geographic center of a country that is reorganizing itself around the Southeast. Tennessee gained 325,319 net domestic residents between 2020 and 2024, according to state-level Census Bureau data, a figure that rivals the population of a mid-sized American city. The state was the third most popular domestic migration destination in recent rankings, having overtaken Florida, according to Consumer Affairs 2025 analysis. 53.7% of the individuals who moved to Tennessee between 2021 and 2022 were between 26 and 44 years old, according to IRS statistics of income data, younger than the typical Florida inflow, and concentrated in the working age bracket that expands a state's tax base rather than drawing on it. Nashville is not the only story. Memphis, Knoxville, and Chattanooga are all receiving inbound movers who could not find equivalent value in the markets they left. The number of people who have moved to Tennessee from somewhere they were paying the highest possible version of state income tax and are now paying none is large enough to appear in congressional redistricting projections. Living in Tennessee is like finding out that the no state income tax you always assumed was a talking point is, when it shows up in your monthly budget, actually a number, and the number changes what you can afford. Number 7, Georgia. This entry requires a distinction that most migration stories overlook. The metro Atlanta area recorded net domestic outmigration, more people leaving for other states than arriving from them, for the first time in 30 years, according to Census Bureau data for the 12 months ending in mid-2024. That is a meaningful data point. It is also incomplete. Georgia, as a state, is still growing through domestic migration. And Georgia is receiving something specific. People who were heading to Florida, got there, and then kept moving north. The Census Bureau's 2023 American Community Survey identified Florida to Georgia as the fourth largest state-to-state migration flow in the country, with Florida sending more residents to Georgia than it received in return. Georgia is not just receiving people from New York and Illinois and California, though it receives those too. It is receiving people from Florida who discovered that the state they moved to for affordability had been transformed by the same migration wave they were part of. Georgia offers something specific: proximity to the coastal economies of the Southeast without the insurance crisis, without the hurricane exposure of the Gulf Coast, and without the home prices that Florida's growth decade produced. The South is growing. Within the South, Georgia is absorbing the overflow. Living in Georgia is like being the second stop on a road trip that started somewhere expensive, the place people arrive at after they discover that the first place they stopped has already been discovered. Number 6, Idaho. North American Van Lines ranked Idaho as the most inbound state in the country for 2 consecutive years, 2024 and 2025. Not one of the most inbound. The most Census Bureau data for fiscal 2024 showed Idaho's population growth, attributable to net domestic migration at 0.83%, second only to South Carolina among the states with the largest per capita migration gains that year, according to Tax Foundation analysis. From 2020 to 2024, Idaho ranked first proportionally among all states for domestic in-migration, more people per existing resident than any other state in the country. The people arriving in Idaho are specific. They are arriving primarily from California and Washington, 2 states with the highest housing costs and state income tax rates in the country. They are arriving with equity from California home sales that makes Idaho's market at its post-boom prices still appear reasonable by comparison. The Boise metro area absorbed more California migrants in the pandemic years than almost any other comparable market in the country. Idaho's transformation from overlooked western state to in-demand destination is one of the more complete demographic reversals of the last decade. It is also producing the same affordability pressure that every previous wave of migration to a previously affordable state has produced, which means Idaho is already becoming for the people who arrive next what California was for the people who started this chain. Living in Idaho is like being the affordable alternative that the affordable alternative moved to, and watching the price of being alternative go up. Subscribe now because the 5 destinations ahead are where the numbers are largest, the consequences are most visible, and the story of American domestic migration is most fully written. Number 1 on this list is receiving more domestic migrants per capita than any other state in the country. And the median age of the people arriving says more about why they are leaving than anything the outbound state's politicians have said about it. Keep watching. Number 5, Arizona. In 2023, 54,222 Californians moved to Arizona, the 5th largest single state-to-state migration flow in the entire country that year, according to Census Bureau American Community Survey, state-to-state data. California and New York combined accounted for 6 of the 10 largest state-to-state migration flows tracked that year, and Arizona captured one of the largest California flows directly. Arizona's Phoenix metropolitan area remains among the top 5 fastest-growing metro areas by raw population gain, even as the pace of growth has decelerated from its pandemic peak. The state gains migrants from colder states, New York, Michigan, Illinois, Washington, Iowa, and from states with high housing costs, primarily California, and to a lesser degree, Colorado. Arizona's appeal is specific. No state income tax on Social Security benefits for most residents, a cost of living that, despite rising significantly during the pandemic boom, still compares favorably to coastal California, and a tax structure that the IRS migration data shows attracting disproportionate numbers of higher-income movers. Among taxpayers with $200,000 or more in adjusted gross income, Arizona was consistently among the top 5 destination states, according to IRS statistics of income migration analysis. The migration to Arizona is not just a population story, it is a tax story. The people with the most discretion over where they live, the ones whose decisions carry the most weight for a receiving state's revenue base, are choosing Arizona at rates that show up in the IRS data as clearly as they show up in Phoenix traffic. Living in Arizona is like being the state that people from the most expensive state chose, which means Arizona is now expensive enough that some of the people Arizona attracted are big size. Inning to look at Idaho and Tennessee, the same way the California people looked at Arizona. Number 4, Texas. The California to Texas corridor is the largest single interstate migration route in the United States. Over 102,000 people make that move annually, according to migration corridor data compiled from Census Bureau American Community Survey flows. The New York to Texas corridor adds tens of thousands more. Illinois to Texas follows. Net domestic migration to Texas was 85,267 between 2023 and 2024, according to Census Bureau. Vintage 2024 data, the second largest of any state after North Carolina in that period. Over the period from 2021 to 2022, IRS statistics of income data showed Texas gaining 182,704 net individual migrants, second only to Florida. The people moving to Texas are younger than the people moving to Florida. IRS data shows 60.4% of Texas inflows in the 2021 to 2022 period were individuals between 26 and 44 years of age, working age, not retirement age. They are arriving for jobs at corporations that relocated from California, at energy companies in Houston, at the technology sector in Austin, at the financial services industry in Dallas, and they are bringing income that the state's zero personal income tax converts into immediate additional purchasing power. Texas is not a retirement destination in the same way Florida is. It is a relocation destination. Companies, not just people, have been voting with their addresses, and when the companies move, the people with the highest incomes in those companies often follow. Living in Texas is like being the place that the expensive place decided to go, and discovering the ours. When enough of those people arrive, the place that was the answer starts becoming part of the question. Number 3, North Carolina. For 2 consecutive years, 2024 and 2025, North Carolina ranked first in net migration interest among all 50 states according to Consumer Affairs analysis of over 122,000 users actively researching interstate moves. First, among all 50 states, for 2 years in a row. Census Bureau, vintage 2024 data confirms the underlying reality. North Carolina gained 82,288 net domestic migrants between 2023 and 2024, the largest net gain of any state in the country that year. Between 2020 and 2024, the cumulative net domestic gain reached 383,851, behind only Florida and Texas in absolute volume. Who is arriving? The IRS statistics of income data is specific. Among taxpayers with $200,000 or more in adjusted gross income, North Carolina was among the top 5 destination states consistently across multiple years. United Van Line's survey data shows retirement cited as the reason by more than 1 in 5 movers to North Carolina, people leaving New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, and Pennsylvania, and choosing the Research Triangle, the Charlotte region, and the coastal communities of Wilmington and the Outer Banks as the place where their retirement income goes further. The political consequence is documented. North Carolina is a documented swing state, and the Brookings Institution analysis noted that 4 of the 7 swing states in the 2024 presidential election, including North Carolina, were among the top 10 states for net domestic migration. The people arriving are not a demographically homogeneous group. They are arriving from blue states and red states. They are bringing their politics with them, in proportions that no analyst has yet been able to predict with precision. Living in North Carolina is like moving to the place where the country is being remade, not by legislation, but by the cumulative decisions of millions of people choosing where to buy their next house. Number 2, Florida. The Internal Revenue Service statistics of income data puts Florida in first place for net individual domestic migration for the 2021 to 2022 period, 261,863 net individuals on 126,837 net tax returns. No other state is close in that data set. The New York to Florida corridor moves approximately 91,000 people per year. The New Jersey to Florida corridor moves approximately 47,000 per year. 20% of New Jersey's outbound movers go to Florida, according to United Van Lines. Among taxpayers with $200,000 or more in adjusted gross income, Florida is the top destination state in the IRS migration data, above Texas, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Arizona. The money moving to Florida is extraordinary. The Sunshine State absorbed more high-income tax filers in the pandemic years than any other state, a fact with direct fiscal consequences, because Florida funds itself without a state income tax, and those arrivals pay property taxes and sales taxes that compound into a revenue stream no other state is generating at the same pace. But something has changed. Florida's net domestic migration slowed by 42 to 49% between 2022 to 2023 and 2023 to 2024, according to Census Bureau data. United Van Lines 2025 data showed Florida moving to a balanced state for the first time in years, as many moves left Florida ACA's arrived. The insurance crisis is real. The hurricane exposure is real. The home prices that were supposed to be the affordable alternative are real. Florida is still the largest destination by volume in the IRS record. It is no longer the place where the story ends. Increasingly, it is the place where people stop before going somewhere else. Living in Florida right now is like arriving at the party that everyone talked about and discovering that the people who have been there the longest are starting to check what time the next destination opens. Number 1, South Carolina. By the measure that tells you the most, net domestic migration as a percentage of existing population, South Carolina was the top destination state in the country for 2024. 1.26% of South Carolina's population arrived as net domestic migrants between July 2023 and July 2024, according to Resi Club analysis of Census Bureau Vintage 2024 data. That is not a plurality. That is first place nationally among all 50 states. The Census Bureau. Vintage 2024 absolute figures confirm the magnitude. 68,043 net domestic migrants in a single year, a state of approximately 5.5 million people gaining more than 68,000 net new residents from other states in 12 months. From 2020 to 2024, South Carolina's cumulative net domestic gain totaled 299,962, according to geocurrents analysis of Census Bureau data, third only behind Florida and Texas in absolute volume. The Myrtle Beach metropolitan area ranked third in the country for population growth rate in the 2023 to 2024 period at 3.8%, according to Census Bureau data. Myrtle Beach grew faster than Austin, faster than Nashville, faster than Phoenix. The New York tri-state region is the largest source of South Carolina's inbound migration. Yorkers added the highest net number of households to South Carolina. New Jersey arrivals brought an average adjusted gross income of $124,621, according to IRS Smart Asset Analysis. The households arriving from Illinois brought an average adjusted gross income of $147,012. Those from Massachusetts brought an average of $144,052. The people moving to South Carolina are not primarily moving for jobs. According to United Van Lines survey data, retirement was cited by more than 1 in 4 movers to South Carolina, the highest retirement-driven inflow rate of any state in the top destinations. They are arriving in the 55 to 62 age cohort in the largest numbers. They are buying homes. Myrtle Beach and Greenville-Spartanburg are the top landing metros. The coast and the upstate are absorbing a migration wave that is simultaneously generating economic activity and putting pressure on housing costs, healthcare capacity, and the infrastructure of a state that was not built for this volume of arrival. South Carolina is where the numbers are most concentrated, most recent, and most consequential. It is the answer to the question this script started with. Not because it is famous, but because the data keeps pointing there with a consistency that no other state is currently matching. The people leaving New York are going somewhere. The people leaving New Jersey are going somewhere. The people leaving Illinois, Massachusetts, and California are going somewhere. And by every measure available, Census Bureau, IRS, United Van Lines, Resi Club, a significant share of all of them are going to South Carolina. Living in South Carolina is like being the place that people from expensive places discovered before the magazines wrote about. It did, and wondering how long it stays that way. Thanks for watching.